Srimad Paramahansa Prabhupada Asubhiḥ Sadushi Shiman, His Divine Grace Lacey Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande, and all glories to the sound devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Gnanandana Salakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Savitam Yena Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagara Raghunatam Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Vrajana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakan Vidamscha Hey Krishna Karna Sindho Dinabandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishubhanu Siddhadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Turvyascha Kripa Sindhuvyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 24, the renunciation of Kardama Muni, text number 11. Sabhājayan viśuddhena cetasā tac-cikīrṣitam prahṛṣyamāṇair asubhiḥ kardamam cedam abhyadhāt sabhājayan viśuddhena cetasā tac-cikīrṣitam prahṛṣyamāṇair asubhiḥ kardamam cedam abhyadhāt. Abhyadhāt viśuddhena tac-cikīrṣitam asubhiḥ kardamam cedam abhyadhāt. Ladies, tac-cikīrṣitam asubhiḥ cedam abhyadhāt sabhājayan, worshipping, viśuddhena, pure, cetasā, with a heart, tac of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, tac-cikīrṣitam, the intended activities, prahṛṣyamāṇair, gladdened, asubhiḥ, with senses, kardamam, to Kardama Muni, and Devahūti, idam, this, abhyadhāt, spoke. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, 8th Swami to the Prabhupada. After worshipping the Supreme Lord with gladdened senses and a pure heart for His intended activities as an incarnation, Brahmā spoke as follows to Kardama and Devahūti. Please repeat. After worshipping the Supreme Lord with gladdened senses and a pure heart for His intended activities as an incarnation, Brahmā spoke as follows to Kardama and Devahūti. Prabhupada's Purport. As explained in Bhagavad-gītā, 4th chapter, anyone who understands the transcendental activities, the appearance and the disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to be understood is to be considered liberated. Brahmā, therefore, is a liberated soul. Although he is in charge of this material world, he is not exactly like the common living entity, since he is liberated from the majority of the follies of the common living entities. He has a knowledge of the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he therefore worshipped the Lord's activities. And with a glad heart, he also praised Kardama Muni, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Kapila, had appeared as his son. One who can become the father of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is certainly a great devotee. There is a verse spoken by a Brahmana in which he says that he does not know what the Vedas and what the Puranas are, but while others might be interested in the Vedas or Puranas, he is interested in Nanda Mahārāja, who appeared as the father of Krishna. The Brahmana wanted to worship Nanda Mahārāja as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As a child, crawled in the yard of his house. These are some of the good sentiments of devotees. If a recognized devotee brings forth the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his son, how he should be praised. Brahmā, therefore, not only worshipped the incarnation of Godhead Kapila, but also praised his so-called father Kardama Muni. So the verse again. After worshipping the Supreme Lord with gladdened senses and a pure heart for his intended activities as an incarnation, Brahmā spoke as follows to Kardama and Devahūti. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskyadyade Satarane. As stated in this verse, in Prabhupada's Purport, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha tyaktva deham panarjanma naiti mam eti swarjana. That's Bhagavad-gītā 4, chapter 4. Okay. So Krishna says, Janma one's birth, karma, one's activities. Janma karma chame divyam. They're divine. And janma karma chame divyam yo veti tattvataha. One who can understand these things in tattva. Tat means that. And tva means a collection of things that's perceivable, that one is experiencing. Not just theoretically, but by actual direct experience. So one who's actually conscious of Krishna will naturally understand his birth and activities. And then one becomes eligible to go back to the spiritual world. Now Krishna in the next verse says, Vita raga bhaya krodha manmana mamupashitya bhava jnana tapasa puta madbhavam agata. Being freed from attachment, from fear, and from anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge about me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. So, the beginning, well, generally speaking, when people hear about Krishna, they don't understand him very well. And that might include ourselves also. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad-gītā, Ukramantam sitim vapi, bhunjana vagananvita, vimudo nanapashanti, pashanti jnana chakshusha. The mudhas, they cannot understand how the living entity quits his body or what kind of body he enjoys under the spell of the mode's material nature. But those whose eyes are trained with knowledge can see all this clearly. In other words, Krishna consciousness, first of all, is meant to train us with knowledge. We may not see everything clearly at first, but at least we should see things theoretically. The more we see things in Krishna consciousness, then the more we make advancement in devotional service. It is not that we start off as self-realized souls and we understand Krishna perfectly, but at least we should understand theoretically Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. As a matter of fact, that's all we have to learn, is Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. There's no need for any other knowledge, although sometimes some other knowledge may be helpful. In order to understand Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. If we don't understand even Brahman, the first instruction in the Bhagavad-gītā, at least even theoretically, then we're on the level of mudhas, fools. As Prahladananda Maharaj was asked by his father, what was the best thing you've learned in school? Now I'm sure most of us, after coming home from school, sometimes our mother or father would ask us, what was the best thing we've learned in school? Unfortunately, we couldn't respond the same way as Prahladananda Maharaj. My dear father and mother, the best thing I've learned in school is that you're a number one fool. But Prahladananda Maharaj said, tac-cikīrṣitam manye sorivaridena sada samudvigna dhyama sakrahat. Edvatma putam griham andakupam katog vanam yaddari ashriyetya. Prahladananda Maharaj told his father, you should go to Vrindavan, especially to the Krishna Balaram temple, and take shelter there. But why did Prahladananda Maharaj tell his father that you're a fool? Because although Hiranyakashipu was thinking he was controlling the whole world, the whole universe, still he was anxiety. So what is the value of being an illusion, a big illusion? Now he didn't have a little illusion, he had a big, big illusion, but still he wasn't happy, he was in anxiety, constantly intoxicated. So similarly, we may imagine ourselves to be very much advanced in Krishna consciousness, but if we're identifying with this body, then what exactly is our advancement? As I said the last time I was here, but I'll repeat it again. When we wake up in the morning, we look in the mirror, and we ask the mirror, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the greatest of them all? And generally speaking, most of us get the same answer. My dear soul, after so many births and deaths, finally you're getting darshan of the Supreme within the mirror. And therefore, we become enthusiastic. We become enlivened and enlightened, and then we know what our duty is, that today I'm going to serve that deity I'm seeing in the mirror with unalloyed, constant, full attention throughout the whole day. And so, if we're a little pious, then we take a shower in the name of abhishek. Then we clothe the deity, we decorate the deity, we offer the deity 5 kinds of foodstuffs, and then we're prepared to go out into the world to spread the glories of the deity all over the world. We call that Sankirtan. So this is called ignorance. Now, when we hear Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad-gītā, Chaitanya Charitamrita, we should not think that I'm necessarily a liberated soul and I'm actually understanding or experiencing what I'm reading. One has to become qualified. Of course, if we learn how to read properly, we learn how to hear properly, then we become qualified. So the sound vibration is there in the books, the holy name is there, but we have to enter into the holy name by developing transcendental knowledge, beginning with amadidvam, adam vidvam, ahimsa shanti arjavam, acharya pasanam socham, styriam atma vinigraha. And it goes on. So the first thing is humility. And the first humility is to admit that I'm actually a number one fool. And perhaps we're all tied for number one, I don't know. But we're fools because we're thinking we're this body. If we look into the mirror and we see something other than a 1/10,000th the size of tip hair and size soul, then we're in ignorance. And because we're in ignorance, we don't know what actually is reality. But according to the Bhagavad-gītā, Sattvanurupa sarvasya shara bhavati bharata sharoma yo purusho yo strata sevasaha. That Sattvanurupa sarvasya, that according to the material modes of nature that we've acquired, we have a certain concept of life. And if the concept of life we have, to some degree or another, is a bodily concept of life, then we have to understand we're in ignorance. Unless we understand where we are, we don't know where we're supposed to go. If we think we're in Vaikuntha when we're actually in some other place, then we won't bother trying to go to Vaikuntha. Just like Srila Prabhupada was asked when he was in London, Swamiji, do you actually believe in hell? And if you believe in hell, where is it? So Srila Prabhupada said, London is hell. So people are believing that they're in heaven when they're in hell. And therefore they don't know, they're not going to make any effort to go to heaven if they think they're already there. Similarly, we have to become qualified to understand Krishna. And that's Vita, Raga, Bhaya, becoming free from attachment, from fear and anger. And as long as we have those things, we're not going to perfectly experience Krishna. Therefore Krishna says, Abhajananti mamuda manushim tanum ashritya param bhavan ajanato mama bhuta maheshwaram. That the fools, again we have the word mudha, not only they identify themselves or misidentify themselves with this gross and subtle body, but they actually think Krishna has a gross and subtle body, that his activities are ordinary. Even in Bhagavad Muni, where people hear about Krishna from their childhood, many of them, because of ignorance, they criticize Krishna. One devotee came to Srila Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, they're criticizing me. And Prabhupada said, but they criticize Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada said, the devotee said, Prabhupada, you don't understand. They're criticizing me all the time. So Prabhupada said, but they're also criticized Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada, so Prabhupada said, they also criticize Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What to speak of our little insignificant selves. So people are believing, they thought Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was as effulgent as 10 million suns sitting before the Mayavadi sannyasis, and they thought, oh, he's Narayan. Unfortunately, he's a very depressed Narayan. So we also say, Namo Narayan Das Namaha. We don't say Namo Namaha Narayan. But they were seeing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu full of effulgence, and they thought he was an ordinary sannyasi. Similarly, when Mustika and Chanura, they came before Krishna and Balaram to fight against them, then Chanura and Mustika, well, actually Krishna said, my dear wrestlers, you're as strong as thunderbolts, you're built solidly like rocks, we're little cowherd boys. Sometimes in the forest we fight playfully with our other cowherd boys out of fun and jest, but compared to you, we're just little humble cowherd boys. How is it possible we can fight against you? You're the greatest warriors. It wouldn't be fair to the audience if we fought against you because you're so strong and we're so weak. But Chanura and Mustika said, actually, Krishna Balaram, we know who you are. You're the source of the whole creation. You manifest the creation, you maintain it and annihilate it. You're not ordinary cowherd boys. So it behooves you to fight with the strongest of the wrestlers, Chanura and Mustika, ourselves. We wonder how foolish. They knew Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and yet they dared to fight with him and get kicked in the head or whirled around until they lost their breath. So they're fools, and perhaps we're fools also. Sometimes we go before the deities and we think, oh, they look very nice. Or the picture of Krishna, oh, that's very beautiful. And they're looking at us, wondering when they're thinking, when is this foolish soul going to wake up and understand what's actually going on? So, Abhidhananti Mudha. Now in India, they say Krishna was an ordinary cowherd boy. Maybe a little stronger than everyone else, but after all, he grew up a little baby. The first thing he did was kill his nurse. Dangerous little boy. And then he grew up, he started to kill all the animals in the forest. He killed even a bull. He killed a calf. He killed a snake. He killed everything that came across his path, practically speaking, wound up dead. And then he became a thief and organized a mafia in Vrindavan, the original Vrindavan mafia. And they couldn't keep their hands off of everyone else's property. And when they couldn't get it, they became child molesters. They started to pinch little babies until they cried. And then finally they became so lusty, Krishna became so lusty, that he chased after all the young girls in the village. And when they became serious, he fled. He couldn't take the responsibility for any of them. Then he finally fled into a Mathura, killed his uncle, killed some soldiers who were doing their duty. Finally, he killed so many people who went to visit Mathura, and then fled into this ocean. And anyone who came to visit him, many times he killed them too. So this is the person these Hare Krishnas are worshipping. These hairless Krishnas are worshipping him. No wonder they wake up and they wear a bedsheet. No wonder whenever you ask them a question, they say Hare Krishna. What time is it? Hare Krishna. Where's the museum? Hare Krishna. If I hit you really strongly, what are you going to say? Hare Krishna. Therefore, people don't understand abhyadhāt because practically everyone is in ignorance. Mogaisha moga karamano moga jnana cetasā rakṣasim asrim chaiva prakriti mohinim shritaha. So this word mogaisha means bewildered. So anyone who's not engaged in devotional service, they're bewildered. It doesn't matter how good we perform our activities, how much recognition we get for so many whatever material expertise we get in making money, or performing in sports, or giving in philanthropy to people. All these activities, they're bewildering because they keep one in the Bali concept of life. Simply doesn't matter how much knowledge we get if it's not focusing Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan to gradually understand through the process of devotional service how to understand our eternality, how to take shelter of the guide within our heart, Paramatma, and ultimately to lead us to Bhagavan or Krishna. Then we're bewildered in our so-called knowledge if we're not making progress towards Krishna consciousness. So what is the process? What is the hope for the mudhas? To get out of being a mudha and becoming a human being. So Krishna says, Mahatmanas tumam partha, daivim prakritim ashitya, padananyanya maraso, gyatva bhutidim avyam. That the great souls, the Mahatmas, they're under the spiritual energy. So we have a choice at every moment. Do we want to be under the spiritual energy or the material energy? And how difficult it is to become under the spiritual energy. Sadatam kirtayanto mam yatantas chadridavrataha namasyantas srimam bhaktya nitukta upasate. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls, they perpetually worship me with devotion. So beginning is Satatam Kirtayanto Mam. Try to hear and chant about Krishna, Manmana Bhava Madbhakto, with the idea of becoming Krishna's devotee, developing some feeling towards Krishna, some appreciation, some intellectual understanding and illumination. So this is beginning. We may not chant perfectly, but at least if we're chanting, then we come under the spiritual energy. We may not realize it, and especially we may not realize that anyone who's chanting Hare Krishna, they're under the spiritual energy. Krishneti yasya giritam manasedriyeta dikshasti chat pranitibis sabhājayantam isham shushu shaya sabhājanam ananya anya indati sunniridayam isita sangalabdya. Srila Rupa Goswami just didn't make up these verses in Nectar of Instruction. They're all found in the Vedic literature. So he says that anyone who's just chanting the holy name should be respected within the mind. Because as soon as we don't realize that we're not disrespecting an ordinary person, we're disrespecting the spiritual energy if we don't respect someone who's chanting the holy name. Because their energy, their activities are actually under the spiritual energy. And therefore it's called aparadh. They're under Srimati Radharani's energy, and therefore if we're disrespecting them, we're against Srimati Radharani. And one cannot make any advance in spiritual life when one is against Srimati Radharani. Now, of course, devotional service in the neophyte stage, just by chanting, one can go from Chatura Vida Bhajante Mam Jana Sukritina Arjuna Artha Jignasya Artharati Gyani Chabaratar Shiva. 4 kinds of pious people, they engage in devotional service to Krishna with some material motivation. Gajendra, he was in distress. He had a foot problem that no one could solve. Dhruva Maharaj, he was interested in real estate. He had a big ambition to get a large property, bigger than that of his great-great-grandfather, Lord Brahmā. He needed a little space. And the sages of Naimisharanya, they were intellectual. They were not karmis looking for some free result. They were intellectuals, they were jnanis. And the topmost of them is the 4 Kumaras. So if someone calls you a neophyte and says you're only on the level of the 4 Kumaras, I don't think we'd feel very insulted. So that's the neophyte problem. We're trying to chant the holy name. The holy name can only be chanted by one who's purified his consciousness completely. Like Srila Prabhupada. If we listen to Srila Prabhupada chanting, it is like a child calling for his mother. He's not just trying to get his rounds done. He's feeling great separation from Radha and Krishna, in loving separation, like a child feeling loving separation from his father and mother. So we have to come to that platform in order to actually experience fully the holy name. But in the neophyte platform, Srila Prabhupada says, it is actually more important for us to hear about Krishna's pastimes in the external energy than it is for us to hear about Krishna's pastimes in the internal energy. In other words, to hear Bhagavad-gītā is primarily about Krishna's pastimes in the external energy. It is not that they're not divine, they're all divine, but it's to give us some vision of how to act in the material world in Krishna consciousness so that our spiritual intelligence is not taken away. Therefore in Bhagavad-gītā, Krishna stresses things like buddhya viśuddhena, tad buddhayas tad atmanas tad nishtas tad parayanaha gacchanya pana avritim jnana nirduta kalmashaha. First of all, he says, when one's intelligence. So what we're trying to do is get some spiritual intelligence. Prabhupada once said that if one man is asking another man, are you intelligent? And the man checked his pocket to see if there's any money, because the idea is if you have money, then you must be intelligent. But this intelligence is, we're eternal. We have nothing to worry about. Nisoshiti nakangshati. We have nothing to hanker for. We have nothing to lament about. We're eternal. This is real knowledge. And with such knowledge, tad-buddhyas, tad-atmaras, tad-nishtas, tad-parayanaha, then we can focus our mind upon Krishna and all other living entities in the material world. Therefore, in the next verse, the famous verse is Vidya Vanaya Sampane Brahmani Gavihastini Shuni Chaiva Swapakecha Pandita Samadarshana. To see all living entities as spiritual beings. Then we come to the platform of Nishta. Actual, real devotion, service with actual feeling, with devotion. Not feeling towards our material body or other things in relation to this body, but feeling towards Krishna and Krishna's devotees in Krishna consciousness. The platform of tad-buddhyas, tad-atmanas, tad-nishta, liberation. Then parayanaha. Then we can actually enter into taking shelter of Krishna, feeling dependent upon Krishna. The higher stages of Krishna consciousness, until we come to the platform of having no interest outside of Krishna's interest and always feeling oneself meek and humble. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us this mission so that we can act in the material world and come to that highest stage of Krishna consciousness. And it is very simple. Well, not so simple. But anyhow, Krishna says it's not so simple, and then he said it is simple. It's simple because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was asked, what do we have to do to become conscious of Krishna, to become a devotee of Krishna? He said, Yari Deka Tarikaha Krishna Upadesh Amara Agaya Gurahana Taridesh. Whoever we meet, to think, to pray to Krishna, because thinking is actually a prayer to Krishna. When we stop and start to consider, what we're doing is actually asking Krishna for advice. And when we act without stopping and thinking, we're just following the waves of material nature, pushing us. When we stop and ask, Krishna, what do you want me to do? Like Srila Prabhupada wrote to his spiritual master, his last letter, that you have so many disciples, I'm a grihasta, I can't do very much for you, but what would you like me to do? So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada wrote back, I'd like you to go and preach this message of Lord Chaitanya in the Western world. So that's the consideration. What do you want me to do? And the answer is, we only have there's one thing, one duty. Krishna made it very simple. Whoever we meet, we should think about what can I do, what can I say, what can I think to help them become Krishna conscious. And if we meet no one, still we should think, what should I do, what should I say, what should I think to help others become Krishna conscious. So then we're engaged in the Sankirtan movement. For instance, if we go on book distribution, generally speaking, if we don't think that I'm here simply to become a Maharati, Sankirtan hero, or I'm here to collect some money for my passage to India, whatever. And the living entities here, they're very good because they can reciprocate with me and give me what I desire. But actually we should think, I'm here to fulfill Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire. Book distribution, or in our family life, or even when we meet some animal in the street, then we should think, what can I do to help them become Krishna conscious? This is Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmani Gavihastini Shuni Chaiva Swapakecha Pandita Samadarshanaha. Then Krishna will become very pleased. Ichatasmad manusheshu kasyame priya kritamaha bhavita nachame tasmad anyak priyataro bhuvi. That there's no one more dear to Krishna than one who thinks like that. Even if we don't do anything, we become dear to Krishna just by thinking like that. And as soon as we think anything else, That's called mogaisha. We're going to be baffled. We can learn how to how to win friends and influence people, and after we get them, we'll be wondering how to get rid of them. As they say, when people are not Krishna conscious, when they're not devotees, they usually wind up courting each other. But most of the time, because they're not Krishna conscious, therefore their courting usually winds up in court. Therefore, whoever we meet, we should try to remember, practice. Book distribution is a nice opportunity because we have a fixed, we know we're there not to find out what the weather is, we're there to distribute transcendental knowledge to them. And even if we have some other motivation, still the fact that we're distributing transcendental knowledge to this person, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu becomes very pleased. I remember when I was distributing books in an airport with a number. The airport I was distributing at was Chicago O'Hare, and there we had the top 5 devotees in the world distributing. There was Tripurari Maharaj and Pragosh and Vaishesika and others, and I was somewhere in the 10 or 20 or whatever in the world. So every time we had such a competition, it was incredible. Every hour or two, one of the devotees, Tripurari Maharaj, would come up to me and ask me how much money I had collected and how many books I had distributed. And if I had more than him, then he'd immediately go out, find someone else. And I remember watching the devotees distributing because there's intense competition. And even I had a prayer sometimes. I'd see someone about to distribute a book and I'd say, "Oh Krishna, don't let him give him the book. I'm going to lose the competition. Save me." Krishna didn't listen to my prayers usually. Luckily. And when they distributed the book, I get, and I immediately go out and I get empowered to distribute a book simply out of envy. I was so desirous of distributing this book that out of intense envy, Krishna would send someone to me to distribute the book. So my motivation was not 100% pure, but when the book went out, my heart became purified. So whatever the reason, as it says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, out of envy, out of lust, out of fear, out of anger, somehow or another, try to give people this message of Krishna consciousness. Krishna will be pleased, Srila Prabhupada will be pleased, we'll be pleased, and the whole world will become pleased too. Hare Krishna. And then we'll understand Krishna in truth. Any questions? Thank you. Yes, we have a microphone here. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much for the beautiful lecture. Maharaj, I want to ask that in between the lecture you bifurcated the word tattva into tat and tattva.
Right.
Tat you told that. What does va mean? Va means Maharaj.
Tvam means a collection of things that we can perceive.
Okay. Collection of things.
Yeah, tattva is a category of things that are perceivable.
Okay.
That we can experience. So tattva can mean there's a category, Krishna tattva. Krishna tattva means everything about Krishna.
Everything about Krishna. Okay.
That we can perceive.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Anything else? This.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. I have a question. Suppose we go to one big businessman, he gives Lakshmi to distribute books in bulk. So we have one option is give many people Bhagavad-gītā or less people give Bhagavatam set. So in that case, one is we give Bhagavad-gītā maybe to people 50,000 or we give to less people Bhagavatam set. So which one can one choose?
Well, it's like Prabhupada used to give the example of a bowl of sugar. If you enter into a bowl of sugar anywhere, it's sweet. So you give one book or 100 books at one time. First of all, if you distribute 100, well, Bhagavatam is like 20 books, then there'll be a big collection in their house, hopefully. So anyone who comes by will notice, oh, what's these new books in the house? If you put one book there, maybe it won't be so obvious. So either one is nice. Whatever. Prabhupada wanted whole sets of books distributed, he wanted individual books distributed. So according to one's inspiration, both are sweet.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. Maharaj, you quote one thing that Jare dekho tare kaho Krishna upadesh. So many times I have been thinking about this, how it is actually practically possible, so that wherever anyone we meet in the road, in office, how we can say about Krishna Katha. So how actually practically we can implement this?
No, we should say what's necessary. Krishna Katha. I remember when I was distributing one time at the Texas State Fair, big fair, there was one big statue, huge statue, like 6 meters high. It was called Big Tex. And during the whole day, he'd go, attention, ladies and gentlemen, at this Texas State Fair, there are Hare Krishnas here distributing books. Don't give them anything. So I decided one day I was distributing at the fair there, I was going to go up to people and tell them exactly what's in the book according to my understanding. So I did that for half an hour, and I sold 0 books. And then I decided, well, let me just go up to people and tell them what my usual lines are. Like sometimes I'd go out and I'd tell people, here's a book, and I'd say things like, you know, I'm a monk. And they say, and I'd ask them, do you know what a monk is? And they say, yeah, I think so. Well, then I'd say, well, I'm not a punk, I'm not a skunk, I'm a monk. Or sometimes I'd ask people, I'd say, excuse me, are you from around here? And they go, yes. Well, here's a book. Are you married? They say, yes. Do you have any children? And they say, yes. Wow, you got a good family there. What kind of work do you do? Wow, that's really good.
Maharaj, that is okay. That means that is my realization that when we are distributing books anywhere or anyone we are meeting, but if without distributing books, suppose we have no books in our hand, how it is possible that we can?
I'm getting there. In other words, we have to use our intelligence according to time, place, and circumstance. Like for instance, Prabhupada was walking on the pier of San Francisco with his sannyas devotees, disciples. And one man came with a fish and offered to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada folded his hand and said, no, you enjoy. And then he walked a little further with his disciples and said, and suffer. Now Prabhupada could have said, my dear fisherman, you know, you're eating meat, you're going to hell. No, Prabhupada was kind and polite to him. And therefore the man probably got a good employment with his disciples, the human beings, etc. Because Prabhupada realized there was no opportunity to actually tell him anything else other than, you know, you enjoy. So this man took his kind of a benediction and whatever, and he thought favorably of Prabhupada. Prabhupada, when he met people when he was in morning walks, he'd say, good morning. He didn't say Hare Krishna necessarily. He tried to act like a normal person, and people appreciated it. Although he was dressed as a sannyasi and surrounded by people with sticks. One time someone came up to some young boys came up to Prabhupada, surrounded by his sannyasis, and said, hey man, what are those sticks for? And Prabhupada said, for beating dogs. So Prabhupada was a human being. He reacted normally, but people would think it was normal. So it's not like we have to give a whole philosophy every time we meet someone. We should act like a human being, as a gentleman or a lady, and people will appreciate that. And if we have opportunity, we can introduce some other subject matter, but most people are not really so much interested in those things. People don't, for instance, even people don't come on the street looking for an ancient Vedic literature to buy. That's not their objective. And therefore we have to reciprocate with them accordingly, according to time, place, and circumstance. Thank you for the question. Anything else? There's
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, in today's verse we talked about how the Father of Krishna is glorified. Can you speak something about how Srila Prabhupada, as the father of ISKCON, can be glorified?
Well, when they asked Srila Prabhupada about the fact that he was an acharya, not an ordinary spiritual master, an acharya, but apparently he made mistakes. He misquoted verses, or he fell asleep at inappropriate times. So how can we understand that you're an acharya, that the acharya is perfect? Like one person came into a class, one of our sannyasis was giving the class, and immediately he pointed to the sannyasi and he said, "You told me this man was perfect, but I see he's wearing glasses. How can he be perfect?" And then he left. So what is the perfection? Why do we say Prabhupada's the acharya? And Prabhupada explained Bhakti Samshanat. Bhakti Samshanat was the definition given to a Advaita acharya, that he was Bhakti Samshanat. Therefore he's called Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Mahaprabhu, Lord Nityananda's Prabhu, Advaita acharya's acharya, Advaita acharya. Why is he acharya? Because Bhakti Samshanat, he was expert at spreading Krishna consciousness to others. Everything he did was expert to attracting people to Krishna. That's why he's an acharya. And he knew perfectly well Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And that's what he introduced. He wasn't, in the beginning, sometimes he had to be the Ayurvedic physician to his disciples, but when he became the acharya, the founder acharya especially, then he simply introduced Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan to everyone. He may have talked, for instance, to some race car driver in London and talked about cars for 10 minutes. But Prabhupada didn't have an interest in cars. He had to make friends with people, and therefore sometimes the conversation was different to different people at different times, but